All right, we're here with Red Steagall, talk on his ranch, beautiful area. Want to talk about growing up in the Panhandle. You were born in Gainesville.
Yes, I was born in Gainesville. When I was about three, there weren't any jobs left in Montague County. So Daddy moved to the oil fields. I had an uncle in Sanford who had a good job at the natural gas plant there in town, Henderson Trust. And they needed some help, so Daddy moved up there and got a job. He worked all over the Panhandle in the petroleum business. And it was a little town named Sanford, named for a fellow named Sanford who had bought that land in 19. Well, he died in 1938, so he bought it early on before the oil field came in. He got pretty rich. He was a cowboy working for Charlie Goodnight and started investing his payroll in oil deals and became very wealthy. And he founded that little town, and then he died in 38 and never did have a high school.
Yeah, they had an elementary school there, right?
Had an elementary school, and we couldn't go to Borger, which was closer than Phillips, because Borger was so overwhelmed. When they first started drilling that basin and hit all that oil and gas, and people just came in from everywhere. It was like East Texas. And so Borger couldn't accept any more students. So then Frank Phillips built that refinery over there and established the Phillips camp is what it was. It was a camp for the employees. And they had a school and they had some room, so we rode a bus to Phillips.
That was a long bus ride.
Well, I think it was 13 miles.
Yeah, 14 miles.
Yeah.
And you were there before the construction of Lake Meredith.
Before the what now?
Before the construction of Lake Meredith.
Daddy was on a crew that core drilled that basin and found that bedrock to build that dam on.
Okay.
And so I was there. We moved there in 41. So Lake Meredith then came along a long time after that.
Yeah, 60, I think it was constructed in 62.
I went off to college in the fall of 57 and went down to Canyon.
Yeah, West Texas State University at the time.
And I thought that lake filled up after I went down to Canyon to West Texas State College. So I never did get to use the lake.
Yeah. What did you do for entertainment around Sanford?
I lived in that river bottom. I hunted arrowheads and fossils and trapped coyotes and coons and skunks and anything else that'd get in my traps.
It was about the same thing for us in Phillips.
There weren't a lot of deer in that river bottom at the time. There were a few antelope up on the flats between Fritch and Amarillo on the Bivens. But that was really all the wildlife there was.
Yeah.
Just lots of varmints. But we didn't have any armadillos. We never saw an armadillo.
Nope.
And saw very few badgers. So it was but it was a paradise.
Yeah.
I knew that canyon bottom and that river bottom like the back of my hand.
That was me in Dixon Creek. It was the same way. I knew all the roads and all the trails and the ins and out, where to go, where to go. Did you play sports at all?
I was really into sports. I loved sports. And I was on the football team, Phillips Blackhawks, 1954. And that was the year of our only state championship. We'd won district for 16 years in a row with Chesty Walker.
Yep, about to say Chesty Walker.
And the morning of the first game, I went to the hospital with polio. I had spent the summer on my uncle's farm in northwestern Iowa, and we had driven all night. And as soon as we got in, we started 2-a-days. So for about, I guess it was 2 weeks, we practiced 2 times a day, and it was hot in the depot stove.
Oh yeah, I remember those days.
My resistance got way down, and somewhere or another, who knows where I got the virus. But anyhow, I lost the use of the deltoid muscles in my left arm. And so I couldn't play football anymore. Coach Walker made me the manager so I could travel with the team. And we'd get in late. I'd have to, do the washing and straightening up the lockers and all that, and then walk out to the highway and hitchhike all the way to Sanford. I didn't have a car. There weren't any buses at that time of day. All the other guys had already gone home after practice. So it wasn't a real easy thing, but I thought it was the only thing to do. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
I was a part of the team still. And Coach Tom Tips was Coach Walker's very, very close friend. And he was at Texas A&M, and he recruited quite a few guys from Phillips. In my class was Norman Kendrick and Jimmy Gray. And so Tom Tips had offered me a scholarship. He knew that I wanted to go to vet school. So he said, we'll get you a scholarship, play football at A&M. So that's what I had to look forward to and work for. And then after I had the polio, he said, well, you can't play ball anymore. So why don't I get you a job with Smokey Harper as an assistant trainer? And you can still travel with the team. So I worked all summer long on a road crew, unloading grain cars at Groover, just whatever I could do for about $1 an hour. And I saved $595. And I rode with Jimmy Gray and Norman Kendrick down to College Station, checked into the dorm, and got my books and everything and took every dime I had. So then I walked over to the football field and visited with Mr. Harper. And he said, oh, he was so glad to see me. He said, let's go talk to Coach Bryant for a while. So I went in and had a little time with Bear Bryant for about 30, 40 minutes. And he welcomed me to the team. And he was glad that I was going to be a part of the team, traveling squad as an assistant trainer. And so then I went back in to see Mr. Harper. And I said, Mr. Harper, what does this job pay? And he said, son, this job doesn't pay anything. And if you work real hard and you're good enough to be an assistant trainer, we'll give you a full ride your senior year. I said, I can't do that. I'm paying my own way. Excuse me. He tried to find me a job in the cafeteria, and it just wasn't enough. So I went back to caught a bus, called an aunt of mine, and she wired me $35 to buy a bus ticket to Florida. So I went back home and went to Frank Phillips Junior College the first year. And then I found out about the Texas, what they call it, the Texas Rehabilitation Fund. And it was strictly for victims of polio, and it was part of the March and Dimes program. And if you qualified, it paid for your books and all your required fees and your tuition. So then I packed a suitcase that Mother found for me, and it contained, 3 pairs of Levi's and 6 white shirts and a pair of black Tony Lama boots with the soles out of them. And I hitchhiked the canyon and went to school down there.
And at one point, you're bull riding? Were you bull riding at one point?
I had some buddies that thought I'd make a bull rider, so they they put a bucking barrel at the end of Connor Hall. And so they take me down there at night and put me on that bucking barrel and try to throw me off. And I learned to ride pretty dang good. But they had to tape my arm down so I wouldn't, slap the bull and get disqualified.
Yeah.
So they entered me in a intramural show, and I won the bull ride. So I thought I was a bull rider. I rode bulls for 3 years after that and never won a dime.
Never understood why somebody wouldn't ride a bull.
Because you could. It was a thrill. It was something that not everybody was doing.
Yeah. And you took up playing the guitar and mandolin?
When I got out of the hospital and went through what little bit of rehab there was at the time, nobody knew anything about polio. And they sent me down. I went to school for 2 weeks. And I stayed in Border with my aunt, and she took me to school every morning. And Coach Williams and Coach Jackson put me in a whirlpool and saved my life because they didn't know how to treat me at North Plains Hospital in Border. They'd never seen a polio victim. So anyhow, that got me through there, and then I went down to Plainview, and they didn't have a room for me. And they taught me the best lesson in the world. They put me on a gurney and rolled me in the iron lung ward. There were 14 kids in those iron lungs, and I laid there 24 hours a day listening to those machines. And I made a covenant with the Lord that if you'll get me out of here, I'll never complain about this, and I haven't. You know, that was a fact of life. He chose it that way, and I've learned to adjust for all these years. So I don't get discouraged. Things don't knock me down. I try to I do find the positive side of everything that's uncomfortable and make something good out of it. So that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. So how did you started a band after college?
But after
during college?
After all of the, what little bit of rehab there was, my left hand was just like spaghetti. I couldn't use my fingers at all. Well, Mrs. Miller lived out by one of the carbon plants, and she had a mandolin that she sold to Mother for $10. Mother paid it out $1 a month. And I rode a bicycle over there every day for her to give me lessons. And at concentrate, I would sit for hours and concentrate on each finger, holding it down so it wouldn't mute the strings until I could make 2-finger chords, then 3-finger chords. And then about halfway through my senior year, I had a paper route in Sanford, and I could save $3 a month. So Mother helped me buy a guitar. I paid half of it, and she paid the other half. And that guitar, which I still have, I took off to college and started writing songs, and there were some people there that made a difference in my life later on. There was a fellow named Don Lanier that grew up in Sanford that went to, he didn't go to high school at Phillips, because just as we started to high school, his daddy got transferred to Dumas, to a plant up there. And so Donnie grew up at Dumas. And his best friend was a guy named Jimmy Bowen, who became extremely important in the music world. Donnie and I wrote some pretty good songs. Wrote one that's been really good. It's called Here We Go Again, that I got Ray Charles to record in 1966. So the little town was very interesting. The vast majority of the people were from Oklahoma, and they'd come over during the dry years and gone to work in oil fields. And they worked in those plants, and it was a pretty tight-knit little town. It was like one big family.
Yeah.
And there are only 2 of us. No, there are 3 of us left, 2 girls and me, out of all the people that I grew up with. There's 3 of us left.
Yeah, when you grow up in a small town, you definitely learn how to self-entertain.
You do. And you don't have the money to do a whole lot of stuff.
No. Now, you also found Reba McEntire.
That was I didn't find Reba.
Well,
Reba's mother found me.
Okay.
And I had enough success. I was living in Nashville. I'd left Hollywood and moved to Nashville in '73. And I knew everybody in town, and I had been in the publishing business before I started recording. So I knew all the producers because I was pitching songs to them. So I heard this girl sing the national anthem. I went to the national finals in Oklahoma City, because I wanted to be a part of rodeo. That was my world. And I wanted to be back in a part of it, because I left that when I left Amarillo and moved to Hollywood. And I heard her sing the national anthem, and her mother stopped me in the hallway of the hotel. It was the Hilton Northeast in Hilton Northwest, I'm sorry, in Oklahoma City. And Mr. Justin had a suite that he allowed all the cowboys and cowgirls to come to after the rodeo and pick and sing and have a good time together. And so this lady stopped me in the hallway and said, "Can I bring my little girl up to sing with you in the Justin suite?" So I wasn't going to say no to anybody for anything. I'm a visitor. So I said, "Sure." And she brought this little red-headed, freckle-faced girl in and sat her down beside me, and she started singing harmony with me and blew me away. And she sang a couple of songs for me. And it just so happened that Glenn Sutton and I, I didn't know there wasn't anything you couldn't do. So we decided we wanted to ride a freight train and write songs in a caboose. So I called the president of Rock Island Railroad. That's the only railroad I knew. It came through Sanford. And I found the president's office and I called him and he answered the phone. I told him what we wanted and he said, "Sure, we can make that happen." So he called me back later and he said, "We put a caboose on a freight train leaving Amarillo on so-and-so date and you'll get off in Memphis." So Glenn and I flew to Amarillo, got on that freight train. They put a special caboose on the end of it for us. And we rode that train to Memphis and had a wonderful experience. We couldn't stay awake, so we wrote one song. It's called "I'm Not Your Kind of Girl." And we really liked the song and we needed somebody to do the demo. So I thought, this is the perfect time to get a demo done on that song. So I had Jackie bring Reba to Nashville. And we cut that song and one more. And those were the days it was very difficult to get a girl's record contract because who knows what the reasoning was, but girls didn't sell records and they didn't sell tickets. You had to couple them with a guy to really get any impact out of it. Reba changed all of that, but she did it because they did something different. She and her husband at the time. And she started doing shows, changing costumes in the middle of the show. Nobody had ever done that in country music. They had props. Spent a lot of money on props. Nobody had ever done that before. Country singer just stood in front of the microphone and sang, not Reba. So anyhow, we pitched that demo around town, and I was in the publishing business in Nashville. I had moved Jimmy Boy and I had a publishing company, and I had moved that company to Nashville. And I had a guy named Joe Light who was working for me pitching songs, and he couldn't find anybody interested in that girl singer. But Glenn Keener was at Mercury, and he said, "I'm not real keen on those songs, but I sure like the sound of that girl. Can I record her?" And Joe said, "I don't know. Little Red comes in and we'll find out." Well, I just happened to call in that day and I said, "Hell yes, we'll sign her. I'll be there and I'll negotiate the contract. Don't worry about it." So as soon as I got back to Nashville, I negotiated the contract and got her a record deal, and the rest of it's history. All she had to do was get her foot in the door, and she made it work. Yeah. Even to this day, and I'm in contact with her nearly every week, she still knows what's good for her and what's not. And sometimes the secret to success is knowing when to say no. And she does that better than anybody I've ever known.
Yeah. And when did you move back into Texas?
In 1975, I was horribly unhappy in a marriage. And I've always loved North Texas because, as you know, living in the Panhandle, we didn't see a lot of trees, and most of the year we didn't see a lot of grass. And I love trees and grass. And my family, my daddy's family, and some of my mother's family was still in Montague County and still in North Texas. So I spent a lot of time down here, and I just loved Fort Worth. And there was a lady out down here that had been married to my cousin, and he lost his life in a car wreck 6 weeks after they were married, but she had become part of my family already. And I was madly in love with her. I didn't tell her that, but I was. So I knew that once I told her that, I better be ready to move to Texas, and I was ready. So I got a divorce and moved here. I was single 3 days. And Gail and I have been happily married at this point for 46 years.
And you're very active with the stockyards.
We, 33 years ago, a group of us met in the old boardroom in the top of the Cowtown Coliseum to talk about doing a cowboy poetry gathering in Cowtown, because it belongs there. So we put it together, and we've never looked back. And we've celebrated 32 years. We're working on 33.
Well, you've had an illustrious career.
It's been an unbelievable career. I've done things that I've never seen possible. And I remember as if it was yesterday. Sat in a horseback out there on that prairie on the Sanford Ranch and the Johnson Ranch, and watching that silver train go across that prairie on the Fort Worth to Denver Railroad. It was called the Texas Zephyr. And it took me to places I never dreamed I'd ever see.
Well, thank you for your time and having an interview. And I appreciate your,
You bet, Robert. It's good to see you.
thank you.